Hi, I'm Wendy Nelson, CEO of LeadingBiotech, and I want to welcome today Brian Gallagher, partner at Abingworth, for a market outlook analysis. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Wendy. So I'm Brian Gallagher. As Wendy said, I'm a partner with Abingworth, which is a transatlantic biotech venture firm. My personal background is an organic chemist by training. Spent the first decade of my career in operational roles and drug development roles before the last 10 plus years in venture roles.
Thanks, Brian. So to start, overall, how does the biotech landscape look after Q1?
Well, Q1 itself was, anything but usual for biotech. I'd say it was mixed in general, with COVID-19 obviously dominating the news. On the positive side, the number of venture investments, number of biotech IPOs, and the number of partnerships and collaborations was, on par with what it's been for Q1 in 2019 and 2018, respectively. On the negative side, public markets were down for biotech, although all the major indices were down. In general, they were a bit less affected than the broader market indices. The other thing that was down for the quarter was M&A activity. And this may have something to do with COVID-19, but more likely reflects what a robust Q4 2019, where there were a very large number of M&A transactions for many, many billions of dollars. So probably to be expected that the M&A activity would take a little bit of a pause.
Very good. How did the COVID-19 pandemic directly impact biotech companies?
Well, as I said, I think on the public side, definitely there was a slowdown, the drop in share price, which affected quite a few companies. There was also quite a few companies that were impacted in the clinic. Obviously, with the infection, the virus, and concerns about that, and people being, required to shelter at home and things like that, there was a big slowdown in a lot of the clinical trial recruitments, even for some very serious diseases like in oncology. So a lot of companies have had to deal with that and make contingency plans on the financing side because of delayed timelines.
Has the pandemic had any effect on your venture investing?
Not so much. I think, as you'll see, there have continued to be quite a few newcos and follow-on financings that have occurred. In addition, in the public markets, there's been really no slowdown. So since the end of March, the end of the quarter, there have been, I believe, 5 biotech IPOs. So there were 4 in April and 1 last week. ADC Therapeutics, which is a European company that listed on NASDAQ, priced above their targeted range and raised $233 million. And the 4 that occurred in April were also similar, pricing top of their range in general and upsizing the deals to raise more money than their targets. So I think in general, things continue quite well. And then, one thing that the pandemic has actually had a positive effect on, if you will, is on the partnerships. So there's quite a few companies now that are partnering on, trying to find solutions, vaccines, and cures for the virus and for COVID-19. And so that has really increased, both during Q1, which saw about 50 collaborations being announced, and it has continued through April and May.
Right. Yeah. That's, at least, if nothing else, the pandemic has showed the world how important our biotech industry is, right?
Absolutely.
How do you think things are looking for Q2?
Well, I mean, so far so good. I think that as I mentioned a minute ago, the public market IPOs seem to be still happening for select biotech companies. Things that I have heard and read is there are quite a few companies that are currently confidentially on file and doing their test the water meetings. So that's all positive. And the companies that have gone out have in general traded up. So I think with the public markets, oftentimes follow the private markets. And so, I think that there's a number of private companies that are out raising rounds of financing right now and getting traction with the venture firms. In addition, we've seen now 5 or 6 this year already venture firms announced raising large funds. And so of those 5 or 6, it totals an aggregate of well over $5 billion in fresh capital that's now ready to be deployed in private biotech. So I think the outlook looks pretty positive. That being said, in addition to Covid-19, we're heading into, or we are in an election year, and that oftentimes does funny things to the markets. And, so we'll see how all that plays out.
Very good. Well, sounds like the outlook is not so bleak for us biotech folks. Personally, though, I'm really looking forward to being able to meet people in person again. So thank you very much for your time today, Brian, and take care.
Thank you, Wendy. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.